we are talking about this, and this is Zach Lavine to the Detroit Pistons. So the Athletic proposed this trade. This came from Sam Vecini. This was not us. This was Sam Vecini posting this, and he said, yeah, it's right here on the screen. Zach Lavine for Joe Harris, James Wiseman, and Jaden Ivey. That would be the trade. He also did say that he would not trade Jaden Ivey for Zach Lavine. He did go ahead and say that. But what do you think about this trade?
So I think I do want to add context to this because I know a lot of people were, pissed off that this was the thumbnail, pissed off even before the podcast started that we're talking about this. Sam Vecini wrote an article about, I want to say maybe 8 teams that could possibly trade for Zach Lavine. Now, in the trade he proposed, James Wiseman, Joe Harris, and Jaden Ivey for Zach Lavine. I think the Pistons probably wouldn't make this trade, but from a roster construction standpoint, that's the type of shooting guard Cade needs.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really think that Troy would make a trade like this because Zach Lavine doesn't really seem like a guy that is high character. And, Troy always talks about getting the player right, the person right. I don't know if you saw the temper tantrum he had last night.
I did.
So the Bulls came back. They were down like 20 points against the Miami Heat. They come back and win the game. And Zach Lavine takes the basketball and throws it half court, had a little temper tantrum. I can send it to you after this podcast is over. So the optics look really bad on Zach Lavine as the player. But, he could just be doing that because he just wants out of Chicago. He wants to go play for a contender. Like all the teams that he listed, they were all, very, warm states out in California, like, Sacramento's, LA's, you get it. I think from the Pistons standpoint, they should stay away. I think it would be really premature to trade a guy like Jaden Ivey. I don't think you're going to get any value for a Joe Harris who's on an expiring deal. Don't really know what a James Wiseman value would possibly be. This would basically be a salary dump for the Bulls just so they could create cap space. And Sam Vecini kind of said that in his article. Like, this would give the Bulls more cap flexibility if they did want to make this trade. But I think there are more teams out there in the NBA that could offer more than the Detroit Pistons currently can. The Pistons can't even offer a first-round draft pick for context because the Knicks still own that trade because of the Isaiah Stewart trade.
Yep.
So the Pistons can't even trade a first for one. But I would probably be out on this trade, even though I like Zach Lavine as a player. I just think the fit would be weird.
See, I talked about him during the offseason, and this was a guy I would trade Jaden Ivey for. Here we go, continuing the streak of talking about trading Jaden Ivey on the podcast. But Zach Lavine, 28 years old. He's averaging 22, 5, and 3 with shooting splits of 43, 34, and 87. His field goal and three-point percentage are lower than his career averages of 46 and 38. His contract, he's in the second year of it, making $40 million. He's set to make 43 next year, then 45. Then he has a player option when he's 31 for $48.9 million. But I feel like that kind of fits the timeline just a little bit. He does take a huge chunk up, but like you already said, this is a guy that fits with Cade Cunningham. He can play off the ball. He can create his own shot. He can create he can create shots for other people. That gravity, teams are going to pay attention to him. It's going to open up the floor. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if Jaden Ivey will be better than Zach Lavine, who is a 2-time All-Star. Like, he's a really good player. I mean, he doesn't play winning basketball. I feel like the Chicago Bulls did not do the best job of putting a team around him that could win. He only went to the playoffs. He's only been in the playoffs one time in his career, and it was his 5th season with the Chicago Bulls. That was 21-22, I believe, where they lost in 4 games. And that's it. He's only played 4 games in the playoffs. So he does not play winning basketball. But again, I do think that's more of the makeup of the teams he's been on. And, we're talking about the Pistons. They haven't won a game in, they're like, 4, and I think they've only won 4 games since February or something like that of this year. So, they're not really doing that much better of a job than any other team Zach Lavine has bet on. But this is the type of player you want to start alongside Cade Cunningham. Now, whether it's Zach Lavine or Brandon Ingram, but you need some type of perimeter player that can create his own shot and go out and get a bucket. And that's what Zach Lavine provides. And I would be all in on a trade for this because he's off the books when he's 31. At that point, you would hope Cade, Asar, and Duran, because I believe those guys are more important than any other young player and any of the other young players on this team. You would hope that those three would figure out how to win. And then you could kind of see if Troy Weaver could actually build a competitive team around those three guys. And I don't know. I would take on Zach Lavine, even if it is just for 3.5 years.
Here's my counterpoint to the Lavine talk. You have a guy in Jaden Ivey, who I'm not saying they're the same player, but Jaden Ivey could develop into a Zach Lavine type, right? He could be that shooting guard. Like, Jaden Ivey has some pretty good touch from the outside, even though I think went 0 for 3. He was shooting 39% before tonight's game. I think Jaden Ivey, if you develop him and you actually play him, you don't really know what you have in Jaden Ivey right now. Like, could Jaden Ivey be that movement shooter that Cade Cunningham needs? We're going to have to wait and see and develop him and actually, give him some consistent minutes to see. I think it would be premature to trade for a guy like a Zach Lavine. A trade like that to me is I'm going to try to save my job. Like when Van Gundy traded for Blake Griffin, he was trying to save his job. And I know we're going to get into Troy Weaver earlier. I don't really know if Troy's really worried about his job right now. Like, because I think he's kind of, pitched like, hey, like this is going to take some time. This is going to take a couple of years for me to, get these pieces to flow together. But I think Lavine's a talented player. I just don't think culturally he could handle the pressure playing in Detroit. And the fans are extremely tough on players. I mean, you read some of the comments that we get in the chat. Just imagine what you get like on your personal Instagram or your personal social media. Like, there's a reason why Killian Hayes has deactivated his Instagram more than 3 times this year. It's just, fans are really on your ass. If you're not winning, what are you doing for them? Like, I don't think Lavine would be able to handle the pressure here in Detroit because I don't really think if you trade for him, you're winning a championship.
Yeah, you're not winning a championship this year with him on the team, but I think he creates a more competitive team alongside Cade Cunningham. It'd be a more fun backcourt. I think too, with Jaden Ivey, they got to get way more creative offensively to see his real potential on this team. He's not like Lou Williams as a 6-man. He's not that type of scorer just yet. Maybe he can get to that type of level. But even though at the beginning of the season, I was like, yeah, dude, the 6-man role, that might be good for Jaden Ivey. He's just not that type of scorer yet. He doesn't have that much in his bag. He's not the 3-level scorer. He has 2 modes. Either he's shooting the 3 or he's trying to attack the rim. There is no real in between for his game yet. It might get there, but he's just not complete yet. And I don't know. The Pistons, again, I think are just doing a disservice to him when they're on the offensive end because they're not getting creative with him on the floor. So I just don't know if Jaden Ivey – right now it seems like we're not going to see Jaden Ivey reach his potential with the Detroit Pistons the way he's being used and the way he's playing right now. Not saying – I mean, he could get there. And, I mean, I'm obviously rooting for him, but it just seems like the Pistons are not – it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen the way things are looking right now. Now, that could change. It's only been 14 games under Monty Williams, but it seems so confusing right now. I mean, that's it. And I feel bad for Jaden Ivey, man. It really sucks. Like he's taken a lot of crap this season, it's a lot really out of his control.
Yeah, I feel like he's taken a lot of bullets for a lot of the blame this year. And I think Organic Lindo said it perfectly. And I want to find the comment that he left live on YouTube right now. If you guys are watching there, he says, Ivy gets inconsistent minutes and contradictory messages from the coach. What do people expect? And I 100% agree. I think we've talked about this, I feel like for a month, that the message for him isn't the same message for everyone on the team. And now Asar did get that message last game against the Cavs where Monty only played him 17 minutes and just ripped him out of the game. So maybe the message is, starting to be more consistent, but like before that, like it was just Jaden Ivey just getting punished for missing a defensive assignment and stuff like that. But I think when you're on an 11-game losing streak and then you see the Zach Lavine stuff, like I just don't think Detroit would make a trade like that. Like you have to develop Ivy and see what you have before you trade, because then you're going to have the fans that like, oh, turned into another Middleton situation, turned into another Dinwiddie situation, and we both don't want that.
I mean, I don't want it, but I mean, that's sometimes the gamble with it. But again, if you're not, there's another side of it for me too. Like, if you're not going to put Jaden Ivey, if you're not going to give him consistent minutes, you're not going to put him in situations where he can thrive, then what are you doing? You're just doing a disservice to him as a player.